I'm not doing this webinar live. An opportunity came up that was too good to miss. I have been involved in the challenge panel, which is looking at the Department of Culture, Media, Sports, Tourism team, looking at the northeast of England for their visitor strategy, their visitor economy strategy. We've had 2 meetings virtually, and believe it or not, sustainability and net zero hardly appeared. So I'm taking the opportunity to spend 24 hours with the policy team and other people to really get this right, that you cannot start talking about regional strategies with not having sustainability, regenerative and carbon at the heart of that agenda and not something bolted on afterwards. So apologies. But I'm going to share my screen and then we'll start going through what I would have said if I'd been with you in the virtual flesh, so to speak. Right, now we try to share the screen bit. And this is where I would normally ask if anybody can see me. So I will make an assumption you can, because it seems to be working the same. 2030 and beyond. And I think the more important thing is this has got to be a totally new direction. Okay, some of it has been happening, but we've got to be honest that we've not taken anything seriously about sustainability carbon. Really, there's lots of statements, but not enough action. So I'm going to go through some history, some stats and facts, the positives and negatives about the visitor economy. And let's face it, most things to do with the economy do have pluses and minuses. And then more importantly, the vision, which gives us the direction to go in, the challenges, a whole thing around destination leadership, which is sadly lacking. And then what are the actions we should be taking? So first of all, it's a bit of history. The 1969 Tourism Development Act, which set up the English Tourist Board, the British Tourist Authority, regional tourist boards, which I ran one, as some of you will know, for many years, and actually the Cornwall Tourist Board, because when they set up one in the region, Cornwall wanted its own. So see, never changed. In the 2000s, we had the regional development agencies, which did have some money, because by the late 1990s, the amount of central government money for tourism development work had sort of almost dried up. And it was all about marketing, particularly marketing abroad, getting more people to fly into the country. The regional development aids did pick up about destination management organisations, and particularly I was quite proud of South West Tourism, and we did win an international award about sustainable tourism. And Coast appeared then, particularly in Cornwall, and we worked with Coast quite well, and that was quite a powerful force. And I think the sad thing I reflect on now as we in 2022, the grounds that we were rapidly making in the 2000s fizzled out due to funding and changing towards the end of that decade, and certainly as we went into the last decade. And there was money around at that time. There was One Cornwall, which gave money to visit Cornwall, and some of that was available for development work. And then, as you all know, they pulled out of funding in 2014, and their budgets really are quite constrained, particularly around development work. In fact, we get money, as we have had, for marketing, and actually, ironically, bringing people in from overseas, but nothing else. And it was in 2019 that we really got stuck into what should the strategy be. Our board said this is ridiculous. You know, we haven't had that. You know, we haven't had that position of what is the direction, what are the markets, and what are the priorities. So we've got a situation here. Sorry, itchy here. That really, 1995 was the first time I was involved in a tourism strategy in Devon and Cornwall. 2005 was towards 2015. 2010, it became towards 2020, but it was really an update. But we've had nothing since. There's nothing really out of the government, nothing else. And a lot of us have been more in survival mode and trying to do the best we can since then and fighting stuff. In fact, I started a review in 2013, 2012-13. Some of you might remember that, which is really about keep Cornwall special, look after its environment, take on sustainability. But before I could do that report, they did away with us. I don't know if the two things were connected. Many opportunities, but also many threats. The COVID pandemic has changed things and has given us more opportunities, but also maybe taught us really lessons of what over-tourism looks like. It's almost like looking into the future and we don't like what we saw. We also went through and reviewed UK examples, overseas examples. I was involved in the European network called Next Door. I was on the European Tourism Sustainability Group for 11 years and led the task group on the indicators. So I know a lot of connections. And then we had the research that we'd already done on community attitudes, which is broadly supportive of tourism. 2012, 89% thought it was good for the area. Not saying that all loved it, but they recognize its importance. That dropped in 2021 to 83%, but a lot more concerns about some of those issues of congestion, over tourism, etc. And over the last 2 years, we've had 14 discussions and consultation events and over 200 people. So this is the work of a lot of thinking of the people of Cornwall. Lots of actions. Those are some of the slides from the previous ones of what we could do. And we got a myriad of those. There's a whole bank of actions we could do. But what we suddenly realized is we need to change the direction. And more importantly, we need to get the powers that be and the influential people to change the direction. So I know it's boring to look at facts, but I would have, by the time you're looking at this, I would have done a presentation to the left. I think it's worthwhile pointing out what the visitor economy does. I tend to use tourism because people don't understand visitor economy, but they should. So, sorry, back one. The first thing is the tourist pound goes into supporting the high street and supporting food and drink sector, as well as obviously the main hospitality sector. You'll see there 15,000 direct and induced jobs. There's a lot of marketing people, plumbers, accountants, builders, all sorts of people, food distribution, growers, all benefit from those things. And, you know, when you talk about tourism, they go, oh, 40,000 full-time equivalent jobs. They're all rubbish show jobs in hotels. There's only 8,000 jobs in hotels. It does spread a lot across the rest of the economy. And for those who want an ideal world, if somebody could find another way to have a better economy than what we've got now without tourism, I'd be the first one to say, show me it. And yeah, great. If that gives people better jobs and protects Cornwall better, then great. But let's not demonize a sector that can turn and deliver a lot more rather than just have a go at it. Seasonality is the curse. You'll see there, 46% is in July and August. I'd love to see something about school holidays. But what's changed is we have lots of new markets. You know, 25 years ago when I started in this game in tourism after being in mainstream economic development, it was very difficult. You know, it's only the retired, really, turkey and tinsel coach groups. There's now a lot of people who don't get stuck within that 20 weeks of sort of holidays plus of school holiday pluses. So the positives, I'm not going to do too much on the positives. I've already said it. There's a lot of there. The one I would point out would be 30% of households being partly or fully supported by the visitor economy. Goes between 28 and 33 on different surveys. Now, these are people who are kitchen fitters and plumbers and work in a bank, work in accounts. It also, though, supports that brand. You know, I've seen there's a cream Cornwall shop in Bath now. Look how many sea salt shops there are in the country now, and even abroad. Finisterre, all those people, lots of brands, let alone the pasty brands you see in every railway station, and the cream and the beer. You know, you go to London now and there's Cornish beer there. It's partly people buying into Doom Bar and Tribute. So it does drive a lot of other activity, but the negatives are big, and we've seen them the last 2 years, particularly 2021. 2020 was very busy. 2021 was exceptionally busy, maybe up to 20% more on the peak weeks. Not helped by 56-day licensing for campsites and just swelling the volume with no controls. So we've got over tourism, we've got that seasonality, we've really got a problem, particularly in regard to the environment in terms of damage to the environment, but also damage to nature, wildlife disturbance. You know, we've really got issues that are totally unacceptable, but always equally unacceptable is some of the negative impacts on some of our communities. That's sort of, you know, something that we need to address. It will take time. There's no golden bullets here, but I will bring you onto some of those later on. And there is still too much leakage. You know, I think the more we keep the visitor economy as small local businesses, it worries me about the Sykes of this world moving in, buying up local agencies. You know, those guys are big guys. You know, they're not necessarily going to use as many local suppliers as local people would. So the challenges are, and blame me maybe, but also blame the attractiveness of Cornwall a very improved road all the time, air services, and generally more people loving Cornwall. So yeah, I take part of that, but who knew a pandemic was coming? But we have got to tackle now the popularity of Cornwall. I'm up in the northeast where they want to make the northeast popular. I'm talking about controlling popularity. And it has got to be a truly sustainable and regenerative. Sustainable to me for a lot of the time was to do no harm. Regenerative to me is not only do no harm, but do good when you can, improve the environment, the pollinators, the wildlife, improve the quality of life through the tourism development's been an asset for local people, and keep our communities vibrant. And as we all know, the biggest one is how do we actually get to that Cornwall's ambition of being net zero? It's not going to happen by rhetoric and conferences, it's going to happen through action. And from a societal point of view, improves the quality of employment. It's a large employer, but we need to have the training put in, we need the career structures. My saddest thing is when people have a go at jobs is, yes, I get it that somebody might be paid over £10 an hour now, but what if they're still paid that same similar rate in 10 years' time? If people want to progress, they should be able to progress. And also productivity. I think if you invest in people, productivity would go up, but also if you looked at smart ways of using local services more, you can boost the local economy and productivity. And that we look at ways where the visitors contribute to situations with regard to how they can contribute. I know people talk about tourism tax. I don't believe a tourism tax will ever happen for a long, long time. I think if we talked about improvement levies, if we talked about payback schemes, if we talked things, so we take away the sting and almost the negativity and the venom sometimes put in about a tourism tax, I think we could then have a better debate. It's become too polarized, and almost at times, sometimes in the last year, I felt embarrassed. It's almost semi-racist. And just because they're tourists and they're not an ethnic group or a religious group, it's not right to talk about any group and tar them all with the same brush. So my question to Cornwall, and this is what's going to Cornwall Council and the LEP, is do you want to cope with more of the same? Because believe me, if we don't do anything, the industry, Airbnb, Verbo, pitch up campsites, all these sort of things, they'll go, well, if we can't make money other times a year, we're just going to ram more in the main weeks. And that's my prediction. If we don't do anything, we'll get more of the same. We'll see more years that are closer to what we've seen last year. We've got a growing population. It will happen if we don't do anything. And it's not up to Visit Cornwall. We can be part of the game. We can't be it. Or do you want to get the balance right? And it's a big question for Cornwall. And it is Cornwall's question, not Malcolm Bell's question, not Visit Cornwall's question. So the vision is that we do address the concerns of the community. It should be part of the planning and engagement. It's part of the tourism sustainable indicators that I was involved in, so that we actually could look at it right. But I do mean the whole population, not a minority group screaming on social media. We are talking about a detailed debate. You know, there are people in remote areas of Cornwall, coastal areas, that really do need tourists, you know, and there might be a few people in there that don't like it, but what's the majority thinking? We need to focus on regenerative, making things better with tourism, and responsible, not just business operations, but visitor as well. And taking account of the things of when you look at a planning application, what are the environmental gains, what are the nature gains, but what are the community gains? And also meet those diverse needs of different communities. If you're down at the bottom end of the Lizard, or you're up in southeast Cornwall on the beautiful Rain Peninsula, or up in North Cornwall, you know, you're not in a lithium mining area or near a spaceport. So, you know, it's going to play a part. And we do have to avoid over-tourism. And one way of helping with that is to spread it over the year. So let's have a plan to reduce the peak and increase the deep shoulders in winter. That would bring more economic benefit and more full-time jobs in terms of all year round. And it's not ridiculous to talk about a 33% increase. If you get people's employment up to 10 months or more, they will be kept on. They will be kept jobs. And there are those things. So the strategic objectives would be obviously around sustainable regenerative tourism. It's about making sure we derive more value for communities as well as the economy. It's about the circular economy, and most important of all, it's about net zero and how we get there. So how do we do it? So I've talked, it's all nice motherhood and apple pie stuff. You're probably thinking, heard all this before, it's wonderful. You know, how are you going to do it? Well, the first thing I'm going to go back to is to say we need structural issues. We need actions that don't need money. We need flagship transformational projects in this sector. If Cornwall wants to leave tourism to itself, don't blame Malcolm Bell. I'll be sitting on my boat retired by the time you're copying over tourism every year. And we need levers for change. Probably levers for change are the more challenging because that needs regulatory change. But the first one I'm going to go is effective destination leadership. Hasn't really been around for the last 10 years. I know people look at me, I just run bloody Visit Cornwall, excuse my French. You know, I don't control. I don't have any influence on planning. I don't have any influence on public realm. That's what I can't do. I couldn't do it when I was in CDC. Originally, that was done by the regional tourist boards up to about 1990, 1995. So there's been 20 plus years of drift, really, and certainly 10 to 15 years of drift. So what do we do about it? Well, the first thing I think is, we've talked about destination management, but if you don't have destination leadership, management is just running around sticking fingers in dams that are leaking and touching things up and making things better. You know, it's just not good enough. You need destination leadership. So my contention is we need, call it a part, I don't care about the word board, but you need the big players to be setting the agenda, monitoring progress and making sure things happen. And that should be part of or subsidiary to the Cornwall Leadership Board. Goes back to my thing about what does Cornwall want from tourism? What sort of tourism does it want? That takes leadership. And you need a good variety of people involved in that. That's why I put, and you need grassroots, you need local associations, you need Coast, you need the Wildlife Trust, you need the local councils. I'm not saying that's the list, by the way. All I'm saying is it's not a matter of people floating strategically. You need the strategic power brokers, but also the grassroots people on that sort of partnership board. And then I would split the actions, totally integrated into an integrated plan, into what is the management issues. You know, it is bogs, bins, beaches, we all know it, and cleanliness. But what's the development side? That whole thing about driving the regenerative tourism agenda forward, driving net zero forward. That's a massive development agenda, striving for those new markets, which might be no concrete being poured, just walking events in the winter or wildlife events in the winter to attract people. And then you need smart marketing. You know, it's basically getting the message right, attracting the right type of visitors at the right time of year to the right places to do the right things. That all needs to be orchestrated. And that's my analogy. You need to decide what the music is. Then you need a conductor, and then you need the various parts of the orchestra. We all need to agree the music, the leadership board should be the conductor, and the various elements of delivery need to be delivered. Needs a lot more work, but the principle is, are we up to having a destination leadership structure? Moving on to what Visit Cornwall can do. Well, very quickly, because time is tight. What we're already doing is a Visit Cornwall website. We've decided that we won't promote, will heavily promote out of season with our limited resources. The website will be majorly featuring on looking at those 40 to 45% of returning repeat visitors, loyal visitors. These are the ones who come every year. We can convert those to come in November, December, January, and February with hopefully some product development. But the website will feature that a lot, and a lot of imagery and a lot of strong push on culture and eco-sustainable tourism. I don't like eco-tourism as a term, but you know where I am. And we are going to work on a group and we are working with a group, some are on this on the seminar today, on sustainable tourism processes and charter. But my question to others, from growth up to all colleges to everybody, what else are you going to do about helping with this new agenda within what you can do now? Because if nothing else happens from this report, Visit Cornwall will do this. We'll do our bit, but we're only a violin player in an orchestra. Maybe the woodwinds section, maybe. So transformational projects. Very clearly, we need to sort out skills. We need to be able to get people to progress, to be trained. I'm talking about a virtual as well as a maybe concrete in terms of a hotel school, but the colleges working together. I'm great to see that Cornwall and Truro and Penwith are now working together, holistic approach, also private sector. It's a very confusing landscape out there. We need that. You know, it's a massive area. You've seen those 50,000 plus full and part-time jobs. You know, it's ridiculously don't have a more coordinated approach to it. Critically, though, in terms of driving the agenda, we need to have a regional, national, even maybe international eventually, centre for the R&D of regenerative and responsible tourism. We're in a great tourist area. We are a high-performing area. It should be part of our HE structure, and we've had the early discussions with Exeter on that. We need to get Coast back and thriving. Coast, I know, is still there. We need to get that one really, really accelerated, resourced, great to peer-to-peer. They're brilliant at facilitating and driving forward that vision. And we also need a 5-year product development plan. That can be walking events, festival events, cultural events that are low key and distributed. We don't want tons of people driving around to big events, especially in the winter. We've got wonderful things going on in the winter we can do, and wonderful activities. And you've got business tourism there, people who can plan in Cornwall and do lots of things there. And then we need the business and support structures to do it. And then the big ones are levers for change. And this is really one for our politicians and could be asked in a Devo deal and should be asked. The first one is very simple. In the 1969 Tourism Development Act, the compulsory registration is in that act. It only needs an enactment and a modification. So it's already gone through primary legislation. And that would give us massive data for a start. It should be fee-based so that we can give in education into what people should do to be safe. But it's so important that we get that in as soon as possible. It's a shame it's not even in this year as a pilot. It should be definitely in next year as a pilot in Cornwall. The next one is we need to look at those supply controls, especially if we can get that data as quick as possible. Do we need neighbourhood planning to be beefed up? Do we need licensing to be brought in that you can't rent out anything from a hotel room to a campsite to an Airbnb, and other platforms are available without planning permission or a license? It might be in certain places that's needed. St Ives in other parts, Padstow maybe, but maybe not in Camborne or Redruth or other places, and that's not being rude to those. We need to be smart if we look at that and investigate the options and do it. Equally, at the same time, we've got to look at it with an ageing population, increased defence spending now, the NHS needing more money, communities needing a housing crisis. We need to look at what are the ways we can increase contributions for destination management costs. It is treasury gain and local pain, particularly local authority pain. Again, let's ban the word tourism tax. Maybe it's a levy on businesses, undertaken in the right way, consulted correctly. Maybe it is a levy related to the visitor. Let's look at the options in an objective and clear way. So, I've bored you for almost half an hour. I hope my passion's come through. It is up now to Cornwall to decide. Not visit Cornwall. I've been put in this position. I was quite happy to work with others to come up with a direction of travel, but I'm literally the person going, it's that way. We can do a little bit. We can maybe nudge it 20 degrees that way with the right support, 20, 25 degrees. It ain't going to get there with other things. So we're only a player. It's got to be a team game. It's got to have a leadership. We've got to know what the game plan is. We've got to make sure that the people have the skills and the resources to deliver the plan. Or else I go back to my question, do you want to cope with more of the same, which will happen, particularly on day visitors with the population growing by 50,000 over the coming decades. That's 50,000 more day visitors, in other words. Nothing wrong with that, but it means limits how many staying visitors we can have. And do you want to get the right balance? And that's my question for Cornwall and maybe for debate later on in this discussion. Thank you. I'm sorry I can't be with you. And I really am sorry because I'd love to have this passionate debate, but I'm going to take this passion through to DCMS over the next 24 hours.